Buying my first home felt like winning the life lottery. Cute neighborhood, quiet streets, decent neighbors, all except for Rick. Rick was a walking sitcom character with two grills, no shirt, and a golden retriever named Duke, who had one sacred mission: to drop steaming presents smack in the middle of my lawn. Every single day. When I politely asked him to do something about it, he hit me with, "You don't own the earth." Cool. If he wanted nature, I was about to give him the full National Geographic experience. With a twist. Buying my first house was one of those adult milestones that felt bigger than just paperwork and a mortgage. It was the culmination of years of saving, scrolling through real estate listings like it was Tinder for buildings, and dreaming of a place that was finally mine. When I found this little ranch-style home tucked into a quiet cul-de-sac, I knew I hit the jackpot. It wasn't a mansion, but it had a fenced yard, a cozy porch, and best of all, peace. The neighborhood itself was straight out of a coffee commercial. Tree-lined streets, kids riding scooters, friendly nods from dog walkers in the evening. On move-in day, 3 separate neighbors brought over welcome cookies, and one even gave me a printed list of local eats you'll love. I'm not gonna lie, I thought I'd stumbled into some sort of suburban utopia. Everything about the place just clicked. The mornings were calm, birds chirping like they were on payroll. My front porch became my little sanctuary. I'd sit there with my coffee, watch the world slowly come alive, and feel this deep satisfaction like, yeah, this is the dream. No more apartment walls, so thin I could hear my neighbors' Tinder dates. No more street noise or fighting for parking. It wasn't just the house, it was the vibe. The kind of place where neighbors wave, where lawnmowers become a weekend symphony, and where block parties come with homemade sangria and lawn games. I even found myself Googling things like best perennials for front yards and actually caring about weed killer reviews. Homeownership does weird things to you. For a while, it was picture perfect. My weekends were spent setting up furniture, planting flowers, and feeling like I was finally part of something settled and peaceful. And then came Rick. Like a loud record scratch in a jazz cafe, Rick shattered the vibe almost instantly. He lived directly behind me, separated only by an aging wooden fence. At first glance, he seemed harmless. Just a dude with a tan, a tank top, and a beer. But it didn't take long to realize Rick was the neighborhood's chaotic energy source. The kind of guy who brings fireworks to a BBQ, even if it is February. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In those first few days, before I knew what was coming, I was still in the honeymoon phase. Me, my home, my perfect little lawn, and one soon-to-be very unwelcome daily guest. Rick was the kind of neighbor you don't just meet, you experience. I spotted him on my second morning in the house, standing shirtless in his driveway, holding a Coors Light like it was his coffee. This was at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. He wore a pair of camo cargo shorts, flip-flops, and a tank top that said Weekend Warrior, which, ironically, seemed to be his permanent identity, regardless of the day. Rick operated on his own frequency. His garage was always open, blasting classic rock like it owed him money. He had 2 grills side by side, one propane, one charcoal, because, as I overheard him telling another neighbor, sometimes a man's gotta smoke a brisket and sear a steak, bro. Now enter Duke, a massive golden retriever with the energy of a toddler, hopped up on Red Bull and the bowel schedule of a dairy-intolerant bodybuilder. Duke was friendly too friendly. He'd run up to the fence, tail wagging, tongue flopping, ready for pets and belly rubs. But he also had this one oddly specific habit, pooping, in my yard, always in the same spot, dead center, like he was aiming for it. The first time it happened, I chalked it up to a random accident. I mean, dogs are dogs, right? But then it happened again, and again, and again. Always that same steaming landmine, perfectly placed like it was Duke's morning tribute to the lawn gods. After the third time, I decided to handle it like an adult. I walked over to Rick's place, knocked on the door, and was immediately greeted by Leonard Skynyrd blaring from somewhere deep within the house. He answered the door mid-sip of his beer, sunglasses on, even though we were standing in the shade. "Yo," he said, like we were old frat brothers. "Hey, man," I began politely. "I think Duke's been sneaking into my yard in the mornings, and leaving some presents." He grinned. "Yeah, he's a free spirit. Loves your lawn, bro. Real soft grass." I tried to laugh it off. "Right. I was just hoping maybe you could keep him on a leash, or maybe clean up after him." That's when Rick delivered the line that would set everything in motion. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's all nature, bro. You don't own the earth." I blinked. I kinda do own that patch. Like, legally." He shrugged. "Dogs gotta do what dogs gotta do. It'll decompose. It's like free fertilizer." Cool, we were doing that. From that moment on, it was clear Rick wasn't the kind of guy who played by HO rules or cared about things like boundaries or basic decency. And Duke? He was just following his alpha's lead, trotting into my yard like it was his own personal toilet and looking me dead in the eyes while he did it. I tried everything to stop it. I patched the gaps in the fence. Duke found new ones. I installed a motion-activated sprinkler. Duke thought it was a fun game. I even tried sprinkling citrus peels around the yard, which I read dogs hate. Duke apparently loved them. He'd roll in them like he was at a spa. Every attempt just made Rick laugh harder. One morning, as I stood on my porch watching Duke drop another payload, Rick shouted from his deck, "Nice try with the sprinkler, bro. Duke's built different." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and waved. Because deep down, I knew something Rick didn't. I'm built different too. And that, my friends, is where this tale of petty revenge truly begins. I consider myself a reasonable person. I don't jump straight to war over a few stray dog dumps. So before diving into full-blown pettiness, I did what any sane homeowner would do. I tried to solve the problem the mature way. First up, the fence. My backyard was lined with a 6-foot wooden fence that had seen better days. A couple of loose boards here, some gaps near the ground there. I spent a full Saturday reinforcing it, adding new slats, and driving in stakes at the bottom to block any crawl spaces. It wasn't Fort Knox, but it was definitely enough to keep a dog in or out. The very next morning, I stepped out with my coffee, feeling like a lawn security mastermind. And there it was, right in the middle of my grass. A fresh, steaming gift from Duke. Same spot. Perfectly placed. I checked the fence. Somehow, Duke had found a section where the boards didn't quite meet and slipped through like a golden, poop-happy ninja. Okay, round 2. I ordered a motion-activated sprinkler. This thing was high-tech infrared sensors, 360-degree rotation, water jet strong enough to knock a small raccoon off its feet. I positioned it facing the sacred poop zone, connected it to the hose, and waited like a homeowner version of Kevin McAllister. The next morning, I peeked through the blinds like a spy. Duke trotted in. The sprinkler detected him, swiveled with mechanical precision, and blasted him with a strong arc of cold water. He yelped, jumped, and ran off. I fist-pumped so hard, I almost knocked over my coffee. Victory, or so I thought. That afternoon, Rick ambled over to the fence, beer in hand, grinning like a frat boy who just pulled off a prank. Yo, that sprinkler thing? Hilarious. Duke thinks it's a new game now. He barks at it until it sprays him, and chases the water. You made his day, bro. And sure enough, by the end of the week, Duke was actively triggering the sprinkler like it was his personal splash pad. The sacred spot remained untouched, but only because it was too soaked for a proper deposit. Desperate, I turned to the internet's favorite home remedy, citrus. Apparently, dogs hate the smell of oranges, lemons, and vinegar. I scattered citrus peels all over the lawn, like I was prepping for some weird summoning ritual. I even spritzed diluted vinegar across the grass. Duke, he rolled in it. He rolled like he was auditioning for a citrus-scented cologne ad. He emerged smelling like a lemon-fresh nightmare, tail wagging proudly. Meanwhile, Rick would shout over the fence with little gems like, "Man, your yard smells zesty." Or, "You trying to make salad dressing out there?" Each attempt backfired more spectacularly than the last. And every failure was followed by a smirk from Rick, a tail wag from Duke, and a fresh deposit to kick off my day. But something in Rick's tone, his mockery, started to change me. There is only so many times you can be laughed at while picking up someone else. S-dog is poop before something inside you snaps, not in an angry way, but in a creative way. Like a light bulb powered by spite flicked on in my brain. Rick thought this was funny. He thought I was just some newbie homeowner who'd get tired and give up. But what Rick didn't know, what most people don't, is that I have an absolutely unhealthy love for petty strategy. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to call animal control. I was going to bide my time, collect data, and prepare for a masterpiece. Like any great plan, it started with patience. Each time Duke struck, I didn't just grumble and clean it up. I saved it, carefully, like I was assembling ingredients for a very cursed soup. I lined a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket with a thick trash bag, scooped the deposit, and added a bit of water to preserve the aroma, so to speak. Every day, same scoop, same bucket, quiet, focused, like a monk preparing a slow-cooked revenge stew. I'd sit on my porch, watching Rick laugh with his shirt off, sipping his 10 beer, thinking he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about yelling or fighting. Sometimes, it's about the slow drip, the build-up, the smirk you give when the other person still thinks they're winning. And I was just getting started. There's a moment in every revenge tale where the hero crosses a line. For me, that line was about 6 inches deep, lined with a trash bag, and filled with the fecal contributions of one very consistent golden retriever. Every morning, like clockwork, Duke would strut into my yard like it was the canine Louvre, position himself dead center, lock eyes with me like a villain in a Disney movie, and drop his latest masterpiece. And every morning, I'd slip on a pair of latex gloves, grab my trusty poop scoop, and deposit his work into the bucket. Now, let me tell you something about poop. After about a week in lukewarm weather, with a little water added for aromatic enhancement, it becomes something else entirely. The texture changes. The color deepens. The smell transcends. We're talking chemical warfare level scent here. Like a haunted stew, a broth brewed in hell's crockpot. I had a system. Each scoop went in with a satisfying plop, followed by a gentle swirl to keep things evenly distributed. I stored it behind my shed, away from my own house, because while I was petty, I wasn't insane. I called it the Chamber of Dookie's Secrets. No one else knew it existed. Not yet. By the end of 2 weeks, the bucket weighed like a full car battery. I shook it once just to test it. The slosh it made was so cursed, I had to sit down for a second and re-evaluate my entire moral compass. But then I remembered Rick's smug little grin and Duke's morning rituals, and suddenly everything made sense again. Saturday morning, day. I waited for Rick to leave. Like a true suburban agent of chaos, I already knew his schedule. Saturdays meant a quick run to the gas station, then probably hitting the hardware store where he'd inevitably buy something he didn't need, like a third grill or a gnome holding a shotgun. As soon as his truck pulled out, I sprang into action. I put on old clothes, double-gloved, and grabbed the bucket. It was heavy, viscous. The lid had to be removed with a deep, regretful pop. I gagged, Not even kidding, I dry heaved into a bush before I could proceed. It was like staring into a cursed witch's cauldron. Then I walked to the edge of his yard, just behind the fence, and began Operation Border Paint. I didn't just dump the contents. Oh no, that would have been lazy. I applied it. I used a plastic garden trowel to smear the liquid evil around the perimeter of his deck, his fire pit, and the footpath leading from his back door. I wasn't going for a puddle. I was going for ambience. I wanted the scent to linger in the air like an unwelcome guest. Just strong enough to confuse, not so obvious he'd see the source right away. I even dabbed a little near his grill setup, just enough for it to catch the heat when he fired it up. By the time I finished, I was sweating, lightheaded, and 90% sure I'd need therapy. But I was also smiling. I cleaned up, changed clothes, and resumed my usual morning spot on the porch with a cup of coffee, pretending like nothing had happened. Innocent, serene, the picture of domestic bliss. About an hour later, Rick came home. I watched as he stepped out of his truck, stretched, and wandered around to his backyard. Then it happened. He froze, sniffed the air, sniffed again, made a face like he'd just walked into a public restroom at a gas station in the middle of July. What the hell is that smell? I sipped my coffee and called out, loud enough for the whole block to hear. Smells like nature, bro. He turned and glared at me, but I just smiled sweetly and waved. The best part? He couldn't accuse me of anything. What could he say? That someone had used liquefied poop to desecrate his backyard ambience? Without evidence, it just looked like bad luck. Or maybe Duke's own work coming back to haunt him. But oh, it gets better. Because the scent didn't fade. It marinated. It matured. That summer sun beat down on his deck like a slow roast, unlocking new layers of olfactory horror. By that evening, I saw Rick dragging his garden hose around, spraying the deck like he was trying to exorcise it. He dumped half a bottle of Fabergé and lit 3 citronella candles. None of it worked. Every time he grilled, the heat would activate the aromatics. Every time he walked outside barefoot, he paused like he was stepping into a minefield of stank. For days, he was just ... off. Less smug, a little twitchy, muttering under his breath. I saw him sniffing his own shoes, once like he couldn't tell if he'd stepped in something, or if the world itself had betrayed him. And Duke? He stopped coming into my yard, not because of the fence, not because of citrus. I think he just sensed that the poop spirits were not with him anymore. He'd pause near the usual hole in the fence, sniff the air, and turn around. Mission accomplished. I didn't even have to say a word after that. The smell said it all. And that, dear friends, is what happens when you underestimate a quiet neighbor with time, spite, and a 5-gallon bucket. Now, the bucket saga alone would have been enough for most people, but I wasn't done. Because revenge isn't just about what you do sometimes, it's about what people see. And more importantly, what they talk about. Enter the neighborhood Facebook group. It's called Oak Ridge Watch and Chat, a chaotic blend of garage sale posts, lost cat alerts, and residents arguing about which day the recycling truck actually comes. I had joined shortly after moving in, mostly to lurk and see what kind of neighbor drama might unfold. Now it was my stage. The first post was subtle. Just a photo of my yard, with a blurred-out little brown blob in the middle of the grass and a caption that read, "Found, steaming hot dog present near my mailbox. If this belongs to you, please collect your property before it fossilizes. Thanks." It got a couple of laugh reacts. Pay low L. One very confused. Is this a joke, or are you okay? I followed it up the next day with a new post, same format, new location. Update. Another donation received this morning near the garden gnome. If your golden retriever is expressing himself through lawn art, please consider alternate mediums. Now people were engaged, Comments rolled in. This is the most poetic way to complain about dog poop I've ever seen. Suburban mystery thriller, The Case of the Golden Logs. I know exactly whose dog that is. Bingo. I didn't name names, of course. That wasn't the point. The point was to highlight the absurdity, invite the neighborhood to chuckle, and let them connect the dots. Then came phase 2, the signs. I started making tiny little lawn markers out of popsicle sticks, toothpicks, and whatever craft supplies I had lying around. Each one was a mini protest sign planted right next to the latest donation. But these weren't just signs, they were art. I used glitter, googly eyes, puffy paint, and every sign came with its own haiku. Here are a few crowd favorites. Dear Duke the Pooper, this is not your golden throne. My grass feels betrayed, morning ritual. These me dodging dog landmines. Oh, nature, why me? This ain't fertilizer. It's just disrespectful steam. From your four-legged shame, every time Duke dropped one off, I'd respond with a fresh sign. By the end of the second week, my lawn looked like a tiny protest march of angry kindergarten crafts. People walking by would stop, take photos, and laugh. A neighbor told me her kids thought it was a dog poop art gallery and wanted to contribute their own signs. And Rick noticed. One afternoon he stormed over, red in the face, holding one of the signs like it was a smoking gun. You trying to make me look bad? He barked. I blinked innocently. I don't need to try. He fumed, holding the sign up to my face. This one's got glitter on it. Yeah, I said calmly, because your dog's a star. That might have been the exact moment the neighborhood turned. Up until then, Rick had flown under the radar, annoying, sure, but tolerable. But now people were paying attention. One neighbor posted, "Wait, is this about Rick's dog? He's been pooping in our yard too." Another chimed in, "Same here. We just stopped saying anything because Rick's, well, Rick." Suddenly, Rick wasn't just a lazy dog owner, he was the lazy dog owner. The guy whose pet left landmines like clockwork, and who mocked people who dared say anything. And me? I became the weird little suburban hero with a sense of humor and too much free time. People started tagging me in posts. One neighbor offered to laminate the haikus to preserve them during rain. Another brought me glitter glue as a gift. Someone even made a meme of Duke wearing sunglasses next to a pile with the caption, "Poop happens." But the best part? Rick was losing his grip on the narrative. I watched from my porch as he built an actual dog run along the side of his yard. Nothing fancy, just enough fencing to keep Duke confined. I saw him walking Duke on a leash in the mornings, bags in hand, glaring at me as he passed. One morning I waved and said, "Nice leash, bro." He grunted and kept walking. It was glorious. No yelling, no escalation. Just slow, steady, perfectly measured public pressure. Like psychological acupuncture with glitter. The tone of the neighborhood changed. People started talking more, walking their dogs with actual awareness. It felt like a small suburban awakening. And every time I stuck a new sign in the yard, I could feel the collective smile of Oak Ridge Watch and Chat cheering me on. All thanks to one dog, one stubborn neighbor, and a campaign powered by glitter, haikus, and petty determination. For a while, Rick treated my antics like a joke. He laughed at the Facebook posts. He mocked the glitter signs. He played it cool, acting like none of it bothered him. But over time, the laughs got quieter. The smirks faded. Because something started to shift, and it wasn't just the smell wafting from his deck. It was the whispers. Rick began to notice that people weren't waving back as much. That conversations would hush when he walked by. He'd nod at neighbors who used to smile, and now they just gave tight, polite nods before quickly looking away. The signs had done their job, but the real game changer was the Facebook group. One post turned into 5. 5 turned into 15. And soon there was a full-blown thread titled, The Mystery of the Golden Retriever Lawn Gifts. A neighborhood saga. People were sharing photos, time-stamped logs, haikus of their own. One woman said her toddler had stepped in a pile near their sandbox. Another said she caught Duke in the act, mid-squat, while Rick sat on his porch and watched like it was a National Geographic documentary. Suddenly, it wasn't just my war, it was ours. The neighborhood turned into a united front of slightly annoyed, mildly passive-aggressive homeowners. But even more powerful than their annoyance was their organization. People started calling Rick out in the comments, tagging him not so subtly. One neighbor asked if anyone had recommendations for a local dog trainer. Another replied, maybe start with a leash. Rick couldn't ignore it anymore. I saw it hit him one morning when he came out to grab the paper Yes. Rick still read a physical newspaper like it was 1996 and noticed 2 more glitter poop signs across the street. Not on my lawn. That same week, he put up a fence extension and built a makeshift dog run on the side of his yard. It wasn't pretty, but it did the job. Just a narrow path of gravel and fencing where Duke could presumably do his business without making international headlines on our Facebook group. Even more shocking? Rick started walking Duke on a leash. The first time I saw it, I almost spit out my coffee. There he was, in flip-flops and cargo shorts, dragging his golden retriever past my driveway like a man humbled by fate. He didn't look at me, just kept his eyes on the sidewalk, poop bag in hand like it was a court-mandated accessory. It was such a jarring sight. I had to text my neighbor, is this real life, or did I just enter the twilight bark zone? Rick had finally caved, not to yelling or legal threats, but to the weight of public opinion, the slow suffocation of social shame, and an avalanche of sparkly, haiku-covered lawn art. The contrast from before was wild. Before, Rick, shirtless on his deck, beer in hand at sunrise, laughing as Duke charged into my yard like he was claiming new territory. After, Rick, fully clothed, leash taut in one hand, scanning the sidewalk like he is waiting for a SWAT team of neighborhood moms to ambush him with poop reports. Before, Duke ran free, majestic and oblivious, dropping landmines like royalty. After, Duke was contained, disciplined, and if I'm being honest, a little less smug. Maybe he picked up on the vibe, too. Dogs are smart like that. And me? I just watched it all unfold from my porch, coffee in hand, with a sense of satisfaction no amount of fertilizer could ever grow. Rick's reign of lawn terror was officially over. And the best part? I never raised my voice, never called the city, never filed a complaint. I just let nature, glitter, and neighborly annoyance do the work for me. And while Rick might not admit it, I think he got the message loud and clear. Respect the lawn, or prepare to be sign-shamed by 1,000 tiny poets. It's wild how something as small and, let's be real, gross as dog poop can lead to a full-blown suburban transformation. But that's exactly what happened. These days, my lawn is pristine. No more mystery mounds. No more tactical scooping missions at sunrise. Just clean, fresh-cut grass and the occasional dandelion I don't have the heart to pull. Rick, he's a changed man. Or at least a leashed one. Duke now trots obediently beside him on their daily walks. No more rogue backyard raids. No more territorial deposits. Just a dude, his dog, and a leash that screams, I've been humbled. And me? I still make the signs. Not because I need to, but because I want to. I've kept the haiku tradition alive, rotating in seasonal themes. Halloween ones with spooky puns. Spring editions with butterflies and glittery raindrops. A neighbor's kid even started helping me design them. It became this weirdly wholesome outlet petty poetry, turned community bonding. Sometimes I catch Rick glancing at the signs as he walks by. He never says anything, but there's always a flicker of recognition. A shared memory, a quiet truce sealed in sparkles and passive aggression. And honestly, I'm proud. I stayed calm, stayed classy, turned annoyance into art, laughed instead of yelling. And in the end, I didn't just get a clean lawn. I got the neighborhood his respect and a new hobby in revenge-themed lawn decor. So if you ever find yourself dealing with a shirtless neighbor and a poop-happy dog, just remember, glitter is stronger than anger. Haikus hit harder than shouting. And petty? Petty is powerful. In the end, all I really wanted was a poop-free lawn. But what I got was so much more. A new hobby in sarcastic poetry, a neighborhood alliance, and the sweet satisfaction of watching a shirtless Coors Light warrior be humbled by glitter and googly eyes. Let this be a lesson. If you won't leash your dog, you might just unleash the pettiness of your quiet neighbor. Like, comment, and subscribe for more tales of homeownership justice.